Good evening. Welcome to the Pinstripe Chronicles. This is Pinstripes After Dark. I am Uncle Tats, and my special guest with me tonight is Spencer. You all know him from the chat. You've seen him on the live streams with us, co-hosting with Lynn. And with the unfortunate news that came out this morning, with the passing of the man, the myth, the legend, John Sterling. I reached out to Spencer and said, "You have to do the show with me tonight." Spencer and I, we have spent many times off air, reminiscing and just talking about, just the soul of the game. And John Sterling is that. I think now, unfortunately, with the legends that have passed, I think the Mount Rushmore is complete. And we have our Mount Rushmore. We have Vin Scully, Mel Allen, um, Harry Carey, and now John Sterling. I think that really completes the beginning to end of baseball as we've known it throughout the generations of the past that we've grown to admire the stories of, and to the now. John Sterling was one of those. I tweeted out, and it took me a while to tweet it out, Spencer.
Yeah.
That working nights, I don't get to sit and watch the game. I'm a custodial supervisor at a high school on Long Island. I'm all over the place, but I have my speaker, I have the radio. And John Sterling, I'm working for the schools 18 years now.
Yeah.
So, for 18 years, John Sterling's been my connection to the Yankees. Obviously now he's retired. Once he retired, Dave Sims took over. But, John Sterling was a big part of that.
Yeah.
And one of the things, I'll finish this. We'll get your takes on it, and then we'll start, getting a little sentimental, and then we'll go down memory lane.
Yeah.
John, I just have to say thank you. Because you weren't just, a voice on the radio. He called the game like he was sitting in a bar stool next to him. You were able to go through the ups and downs, the ebbs and flows of emotions throughout a game through John. He was who he was. He wasn't trying to be. There was nothing was fake with him. Everything, he was very genuine with his call. If the Yankees were playing bad, you knew it. We all heard the call. These Yankees are running the bases like drunks. And we've seen just the epic explosions. Every time they've come back from a dramatic game to walk it off, and you can always tell the intensity of the conclusion of the game with how long he drew out the Yankees win, and the longer that went, you knew that it was just a special game.
Oh, sure.
And those are the things, working at night, I had to rely on.
Yeah.
And it wasn't that type of dependency where, it felt like a chore. It was a gift to listen to him every night.
Yeah.
And John Sterling was a gift to baseball.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm gonna try to contain myself a little bit. Jonathan was able to get back in time to get back in time home. Jonathan was at the game tonight. What a game, Jonathan! Seriously. And I know you were worried because we haven't done an After Dark for a while, and I'm like, Jonathan's going to be so mad that we're doing it so early. But Spencer, not to. This is going to sound a little rude, but I mean nothing ill of it. With your with the things that have gone on for you medically, a lot of the one of the first conversations we had is you were like, you could still love baseball because you still have those sounds that never leave you.
Yeah.
I don't know if you remember that conversation.
I I recall having it, sure, and it's not a problem. Please speak plainly, Bobby. Go right ahead.
Yeah. I never want to put you on the spot. I love and respect you too much. But when you think about like listening on the radio, and the legendary voices of Yankee broadcasters, where does John sit for you?
John, where he stands for me in my life is he was part of my love for baseball, part two. He's actually in the stage of my life where baseball became restored and my love for the Yankees became restored. As you know, John Sterling became the announcer for the Yankees in 1989. Well, where was I in 1989? By 1989, I'd already been a fan for 10 years, which means that, I started off as a youngster, an elementary school student. I traced my fanhood back to 1979. By 1989, I was an adult. I was in college, and I was now looking at baseball and the world around me with adult eyes. And when it came to the Yankees, what was happening at that stage is all the Yankees that I fell in love with. The Yankees from my first class: Reggie Jackson, Dave Winfield, Bucky Dent, Willie Randolph, Ron Guidry, Rich Gossage, Rudy May. All of those guys were now gone. And in looking at them with the eyes of an adult, you realize, baseball players and your heroes in baseball, they don't stay on your team forever. And really, when Willie Randolph was traded from the team, that was definitely a pivotal moment for me. That was when this view that I just explained to you, that's when it really set in. And I thought to myself, how can I let baseball players become my heroes when all that's going to happen is eventually they are going to leave? Now, of course, it goes without saying, in 1989, they had a very, very poor season. Dallas Green was the manager. I wasn't crazy about Dallas Green. In my life, my family had just moved. In my family, we had moved from Rockland County, where John Flaherty is from, Rockland County, to South Jersey. And in that world, Bobby, you have to remember, that's a world where people didn't have cable. There was no internet. And the issue that I ran into with in 1989 was that the Yankees had made a deal with Sports Channel. Do you remember Sports Channel? Sports Channel is what, of course, preceded everything, preceded MSG Network. It was really the first sports cable channel that there was, and the Yankees put 100 games onto that channel. Well, that's bad because, in those days, cable was an indulgence. I won't even say it was a luxury. It was an indulgence. It was something that if you felt you wanted to get, you got. And my family, we were a household that did not have cable at that time. We went for years without having cable. The reception down in South Jersey was not very good. So even when they were on WPIX, it was hard to be able to see the games, and it was hard to be able to keep track of the games. Of course, the games were on radio back then, WABC 77 AM. Mm-hmm. But, at that age, when you're a young man, and I've always watched the games, saying, well, I'll just listen to the radio. You don't reconcile that when you're a young man. That's something, when you're more mature and you have a different view of the world, then it becomes okay. In fact, these days I prefer to listen to the audio broadcast. But in those days, if you said, well, you can just listen to the games on the radio, what good is that? Why should I waste my time? So considering all of these factors, I really had very little involvement with the Yankees. That went on in 1990 when they were terrible. I was watching them at a glance. In 1991, they didn't do so much better. 1992. It wasn't really until 1994 that I started coming back. I was, at this point, I had graduated college. I was now working at a job. I had a coworker who invited me to a White Sox-Yankees game. For whatever reason, I said, sure, why not? And I've asked myself this over the years, and in examining it, what I've come to the conclusion is that, even though my love for the Yankees had become distant, my love for baseball was always there. And I wanted to go to this game. And the thing is, when I went to that game and I sat down, first of all, I should say, this was the time when, you bought paper tickets. You bought it right at the box office. When we got the tickets, we had done something I'd never done before. We sat right on the first base line. I had never been that close before. And the thing is, I didn't know any of the Yankees except for one. I'll tell you that in a moment. As I was sitting there watching the game, I thought, I am really loving being at a Yankee game. It doesn't matter to me if these are none of the players that I grew up with and was in love with. The only player that was there that really made sense to me was Don Mattingly. And I want to first say, Don Mattingly wasn't necessarily my favorite player. I was always a big Dave Winfield fan. I liked Don Mattingly. I loved Winfield. But you realize, like, here's a guy who I saw play in his first game in 1982 on television. And now here it is, I'm in my 20s, and this guy is still here. This guy is the constant. So this is a long story about how I got back into baseball. Then I went off into graduate school, and I really hadn't listened to the radio all that much. It wasn't until like after 1996, after they had won the World Series, that if I would be driving home from school, I would put the game on the radio, and that's when I was first introduced to John Sterling and Michael Kay. And I liked how they sounded. I liked their voices. I liked their rapport. I liked their differences, and I liked how they were able to connect. And I also liked the continuity of it, because 1997 came along, 1998 came along, and if I put the game on the radio, it was always the two of them. You have to understand that there was a lot of chaos and there was a lot of turnover in the Yankees organization, including in the announcer booth. I mean, I remember at one point it was Spencer Ross who took over after Rizzuto and Frank Messer after they had left, and I don't even remember who the other guys were. I think there was some guy named Joe Angel that initially worked with John Sterling, but nevertheless, I wasn't there for that time. So I came back into the fold with John Sterling well after he took the microphone, as well as with Michael Kay. But I loved it, and I loved the way that he called the games. I loved his character. I loved the way that he was able to paint a picture of what was happening on the field, and I really loved how he had this outward ebullient personality, but he was also so very, very knowledgeable about baseball. And he really took you in. He really made you feel like you were there at the game. You forgot that you weren't seeing anything. Everything about the game was, you heard, like through his calls and through his words. And I know I'm getting a little long-winded here. Let me sort of circle this plane. The second part for me with John Sterling and what he meant to me was, again, and I'm not trying to make an issue of it or take out the violins, but just as the Pinstripe Chronicles was instrumental in helping me, when I went through my ordeal back in 2024, the same thing can be said for the New York Yankees. When I would listen to a Yankees game, at this point I was listening to Yankees games, of course, on an iPhone with the MLB app, so I didn't have to worry about static or anything like that. But listening to and having those Yankee games, the spring training games, the regular baseball games, they were an avenue of normalcy to me. When you go through a challenge in your life, one thing that you do is you look for those normal measures and those normal factors, and you do it in part to make yourself feel normal. You do it in part to get control, to control what you can control, and you do it you could say as a distraction from the challenges that you're going through. Having a baseball game to listen to was extraordinary. And it was a pleasure, listening to John Sterling call the game, especially during the World Series. I was so happy when he came back for the World Series. So again, to summarize, that is where John Sterling stands for me. He is a significant part of my restoration for the love of the Yankees, and he was also instrumental in helping me get through a very traumatizing experience.
Yeah, real quick, because I mean, the social media and the media itself, and the outpouring, of love for John is just something that is reserved. They don't throw the flowers out like that for just anybody.
Yeah.
And I probably spent. I got home from fishing, the fishing tournament today around 5:00. By the time Kelly and I settled in, had something to eat and cleaned up. Yeah, and I probably spent the next. I didn't watch the game.
Yeah.
I just started just sitting there, just going through all the praises of John Sterling through multiple social media outlets.
Right.
And you can't, I went to the back of the closet, and I dug out my old WFAN shirt.
Yeah.
Just because as much as I get on the fan and some of the hosts for their takes,
Yeah.
today, like the radio voices of now and the past, like really stepped up. I thought that they they really humbled themselves and gave John the recognition that they deserved.
Sure.
It started, and I went through all the clips. Like I said, I've been listening and watching, various clips for the last 5 hours
Yeah.
on and off. I mean, it's insane. And I got to start it off really before the fan. Big shout out to Donald and Chris this morning,
Yeah.
for being for having the awareness to kind of shift gears of what the show is originally supposed to be about,
Yeah.
and put the focus on John Sterling as it deserves. And
Right.
not that they need the praise, but I'm going to praise them. I work with some of the greatest people ever.
Well, the Pinstripe Chronicles is how I found out about John Sterling. I
Man.
logged in, I opened up my YouTube, I clicked on the podcast, and I was shocked. I was shocked at the headline. When did this happen? I thought to myself, is this true? And that's when I turned on the news and I put the fan on, and you hear them paying homage to John Sterling. So yeah, your podcast is how I found out on this monumental news.
Yeah, no, it's and that's we try to do that. Like we don't do our shows to grab a headline. Sometimes the headlines come to us.
Yeah.
And luckily, Donald and Chris, they have that professionalism.
Yeah.
You're able to recognize the moment and be like, okay, this is what we need to focus on. Which is why, as soon as I was able to get a phone signal, I texted into the chat that I was going to do this special After Dark episode, and immediately texted you right after that.
John Sterling impacted so many people, it goes back 36 years.
If you look on my Twitter handle, I always say I'm the John Sterling of podcast hosts, and I think that's, it's not that I think I'm this legend, and now let's get to some of the fun things about John Sterling. He was just that guy that, he wasn't going to be perfect every inning.
Yeah.
He had those. It's high. It's the old jokes. It is high. It is far.
Yeah.
It's caught by the shortstop. Like he just never missed a beat.
Yeah.
And he knew that he was. There was that chance he wasn't going to be perfect.
Yeah.
And he was okay with that.
Yeah.
I am not a statistician. That's not my forte.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to, I try to do my shows with the guys where even if I'm not perfect,
yeah,
you're still getting, I'm not trying to be somebody I'm not.
Yeah.
So that's my tribute to John Sterling. I'll never be somebody I'm not.
Sure.
Whether, I'm the same person. A lot of you have met me. I'm the same person on the air as off the air.
I can attest that's true.
I don't try to pretend, because it doesn't get you anywhere. You want to be successful in life. The first ingredient in that recipe is being genuine. And staying humble. Like, those are the things.
Yeah.
One of the
Well, when I
was able to get through real quick. I was able to get through a lot of the clips. I mean, and there were a bunch of them.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if you heard the Michael K video of him talking about with Sterling, with his daughter getting married this summer.
Not only did I hear it, Bobby, but I was.
And I'm telling you, Spencer, that one that broke me.
Yeah.
This wasn't just somebody that you listen to on the radio. It was somebody you invited into your fandom, your home.
Yeah.
You know, and that's what made him stand out
Yeah.
above any of. And this is not New York's not an easy market to feel beloved in.
Yeah.
And John did it better than anybody ever will.
Yeah. He did it very well. To what you were saying, Bobby, not only did I hear Michael Kay, I was actually on hold with him. I called in ESPN Radio today, and I was lucky to get through. I was the third caller, and I just shared with him a few of my thoughts. First of all, on the first thing that I think of with John Sterling, the very first call that comes to mind, it's definitely Luis Gonzalez's World Series winning hit in 2001. That call, it said so much with so little. He was very economical in his words, very economical in his emotion. In that call, he was, objective. He was also sympathetic, understanding of the melancholy that the Yankees fans felt. But there was also like a tone of consolation in his voice, almost as if he was trying to console, Yankee fans, knowing everybody was just hurting, knowing that we just lost the chance at winning 4 World Series in a row. We were so close and we just lost it. And it was all epitomized in that one call. Earlier in the summer, the second call that comes to my mind is Mike Mussina, 1 strike away from a perfect game. I remember I was driving in my car. I was on my way back to Far Rockaway, New York. I was on the Staten Island Expressway. And Bobby, it's like, I'm sitting there. It's like, my heart is beating while I'm holding the steering wheel. It's almost, I feel like I'm pulling my head closer and closer, like thinking, is he going to do it? Is he going to do it? Is this really going to happen? Am I really listening to history? And then when Carl Everett got that single with 2 strikes, it's like the letdown was just, it was so strong. You could not believe that it didn't happen. You thought that a perfect game was going to happen right there on the radio, and it didn't happen. And he captured it. He captured it so well. Of course, I've heard the clips of him calling the last out for David Cohn's perfect game, calling Tino Martinez's grand slam in Game 1 of the 1998 World Series. Now, I've heard all the calls, but those are the first 2 that really come to mind when I think of John Sterling. And later on, this is you talk about not wanting to be rude. When the foul ball hit his head.
No, I was just gonna say, we're gonna. I really want to spend the majority of the time we have left, just going through some of our favorite Sterling memories of him in the booth.
Bobby,
whether it be moments, calls. In the chat, if there's, you want us to point out, who's your favorite home run call, your favorite call in general. I really want to know what made him stand out to you. That foul ball, that was, and Susan was telling the story this morning, on the Fan with Evan, that, nobody would laugh until they knew he was okay.
Yeah.
And then it became the running joke.
Yeah.
I wish I could remember in the moment the who hit the foul ball that hit him that gave him the ball with a Band-Aid on it.
Bobby, that's like out of a cartoon. That's the kind of thing that might be a scene like in Major League, or some kind of comedy film, It's like, I felt bad about it. I mean, that had to hurt. I don't know if you've ever caught a foul ball or if you ever caught a ball in the air at a ball game. Year 2000, there's just a little sidebar. Year 2000, I'm at a game, Yankees versus the Twins. I'm sitting in the upper deck on the first base side. Jose Canseco hits a foul ball. It's coming to me. I reach my hands up, and it's just out of reach. It hits off the tip of my fingers. Bobby, let me tell you something. My fingertips, they hurt for almost 2 weeks. That ball was hit so hard.
Screaming, yeah.
And I'm like crying, boo-hoo, wow, I got hit by a foul ball. The people behind me caught it.
He gets hit in the head and never misses a beat. Never missed a beat. Just kept on going with the broadcast.
I never met John Sterling, but in 2023, as a season ticket holder, one of the perks they give me is I get a tour of the media aspects of the stadium. You go where they broadcast the games. You see where the announcers are. So during the tour, we were in a hallway, and first out comes Ricky Ricardo. I say, hey, Ricky Ricardo, and me and my friend Peter, we took a picture with him. He was real nice. But we saw John Sterling down the hall. And the thing is, like the group I was with, we're shy. We don't want to bother him. He looks like he's getting ready for the game, probably getting his voice ready. He had a paper cup. It looked like there was a tea bag in there. So we didn't want to just walk over there to him. Some of us were afraid. We thought if we strayed from the group, like the security would come and back us back in. Nobody wanted that to happen.
Yeah.
But when I saw him in the hall, the thing that I thought was, man, John Sterling, he's got such good hair. I mean, it's like, I got this, and it's like he's got a nice coif, real handsome guy. His looks belied his true age. I'll tell you that much.
No, one Sterling always looked dapper. He was, it's you think of his career, and when I'm going to get to some of the comments with some of their favorite calls.
Yeah, let's hear what
some of the
saying.
comments here.
Sure.
But for the Yankees, and this is not counting his time with the Braves, his time, doing other broadcasts, whether it be, I know a couple of them off the top of my head, the New Jersey Nets, the Islanders, for hockey, he wasn't just the Yankee broadcaster. He was also one of the originals that did call in radio. Joel Sherman was sharing a couple of stories, regarding that, when he was a little boy.
Sure.
But, or not a little boy, but when he was, getting his, early in his career.
When there were less candles on the birthday cake.
Yeah, it's been a long day, everybody.
Yeah.
There's my Sterlingism. That's what we're gonna call him. But a total of 5,631 games he called for the Yankees.
Yeah.
And think about it. And then here's the number that should strike. You talk about in baseball, we always talk about records, and the Ironmans, Gehrigs and the Cal Ripkens. John Sterling called 5,060 consecutive Yankee games.
Yeah.
That's not an easy feat. When you think about, you're talking about 162 plus games a season.
Yeah.
For the Yankees.
Yeah.
It's remarkable, from 1989 to 2019.
Yeah.
He never missed a game.
Well, I'm going to blow your mind with one more thing, Bobby.
Oh, boy.
Because the operative word that you said is streaks. And that is a remarkable streak, calling 5,000 games before he even ever missed a game. Today is May 4th, also Star Wars Day to some of us. But tomorrow is May 5th. And May 5th is a significant day in Yankee history, but it's a day that really nobody knows about. On that day, back in 1925, Miller Huggins took shortstop Everett Scott out of the lineup. Who was Everett Scott? Everett Scott was the first player to play in 1,000 consecutive games. The original record for consecutive games played was 577, and that was set by a guy named George Pinckney, and it was before 1900. It was before there was Major League Baseball, 1892 for the National League. Everett Scott, when he was taken out of the game, it ended his streak at 1,307 games. And
how do you remember this shit?
I've been looking, dabbling, actually. The question, we're celebrating Lou Gehrig soon. The question comes up: who did Lou Gehrig pass? And you go down the rabbit hole. Anyway, so Everett Scott, his streak ended at 1,307 games. So he was actually known as the Iron Man, and it was big news when he was taken out of the game. People thought that Everett Scott's record would last, for decades, maybe a century, maybe even forever. And remarkably, Lou Gehrig would go on to break his record just 8 years later in 1933. So the connection to Sterling is that this is a sad day that he has passed away, but it is also interesting how his day comes on the same day, on the anniversary of the end of Everett Scott's record, and the two men are corrected. Let me say that again. John Sterling and Everett Scott are connected by their respective streaks and what they meant to baseball. That's the irony.
Yeah, that's awesome. And the way you retain, I don't get it.
Well, Bobby, when you're retired and you're looking to fill your time,
it doesn't matter. I can barely remember what I had for breakfast. Talk about the 1925 Yankees. Jesus Christ. No,
I love this stuff. I'm drawn to it.
But that's really one of the main reasons. One, we've been friends for many years, now, and there's nobody I know that respects the history and legacy of the Pinstripes like you do.
Thanks, man. I appreciate
it. But I want to get to a couple of these comments here.
Yeah.
And I'll read them out. So Neil is jumping in. He's the Cal Ripken of radio announcers. # John Sterling.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Then in Yukon U 4961 condolences to Yankee fans for the loss of a legend. Yeah, no, it's every sports fan lost a legend this morning.
I agree. We share in the loss.
Yeah, and I do have to say, real quick side note, the amount of rival teams and podcasts for those teams, and fans on social media and throughout the sport, actually through all sports today, paid homage to John Sterling, and that the sports world had class across the board tonight.
You know what really blew me away, Bobby, is that on I like my World News Tonight, David Muir. Maybe some of you guys like Tom Yamas on NBC. Some of you guys like CBS, whatever your cup of tea is, if you have a cup of tea. But, he was featured on World News Tonight with David Muir. I mean, you got to be some kind of somebody to get your story on David Muir. Yeah. And it wasn't just like a little clip. It wasn't a little mention. It was a feature story, and they talked about him for a little bit. I was very impressed by that. So I agree.
Yep. Get a couple more quick shout outs also. TC Steele's NFL the Strike Zone. Jonathan, like I said, he was at the game. And we have where is it? We got Angel Boy 228 ABLE. He always carried and presented himself extremely well.
Yeah.
And that is absolutely true.
Yeah.
It's easy for someone like Susan that worked with him that they had that sibling connection between the two of them. You're always going to protect them. And her sentiment towards John's humility.
Yeah.
He never understood why anybody would say a bad word about somebody.
Yeah.
And you heard that throughout the day through multiple channels and networks.
Yeah.
John was really as genuine as it got, and as kind as it got. And it's remarkable.
You're so right about that, Bobby, because I used to read the Post and the Daily News, and I would come across Phil Mushnick. Phil Mushnick, whatever it is, he had it out against the Yankees announcers. He had it out against the Mets announcers and anybody he could. But that's how he got readers. Same thing with this guy Phil Bondi in the Daily News. Remember newspapers? His picture was featured. He had like a big cat mustache. He was this bald guy. No, I'm thinking of Bob Raceman. Sorry, Bob Raceman is who I'm thinking of. Yeah. And Bob Raceman, he was one of these guys who would write articles about the broadcast. When the Yes Network came on, that was around the time of the first Iraqi war, and he used to refer to the Yes Network as Al Yankazira, and he would disparage he would disparagingly refer to Susan Waldman on the radio side, as Georgie girl, and they made disparaging remarks about
Yeah.
John Sterling. Now, Michael Kay on the radios today said, that Sterling, to an extent, he was bothered by, some of these critical remarks. But I remember Sterling, he addressed that at one point, and he said, look, these newspapers, they got to sell newspapers, so they have people write stories, and unfortunately, sometimes they write bad stories about me, but I don't really care. Now, when he was saying he didn't care, he was probably belying how it bothered him a little bit, but I think he was able to, for the most part, put it into perspective.
Yeah, it's one of the things that also that Susan was talking about.
Yeah.
John was not a social, like he was not a technological person. He still had his flip phone, and he used to read printed newspapers, and he was a huge reader, and you hear a lot of stories about the he be in between innings. He's trying to get through a chapter in a book that he's reading. He loved to read. And hearing all these stories about him behind the scenes was like he was admired before.
Yeah.
And now you hear all these stories, and it's like, he was almost like the perfect person.
Yeah. Well, I really enjoyed, even recently, Paul O'Neill and Michael Kay, they talked about how John has a flip phone, and Paul O'Neill was giving his account on how he gave John a call. And well into the conversation, Paul O'Neill realized John doesn't know it's me. He doesn't know who he's talking to. And that's what I told Michael Kay today. I said that story was so funny. I was thinking about that while I was out, just on a leisure walk, and I thought about that. And I think the reason why we find that so funny is because we can all relate to that. We've all had that moment where you're on a phone talking to somebody, and maybe you forget who you're talking to. Or before we had cell phones with caller ID, you pick up, and when you know somebody well enough, you just say, "Hey, what's going on?" And it turns out not to be the person you think is calling you. So we can all identify with that. But I told Michael that was a great story.
Yeah, like another story from Joel Sherman. I mean, there were so many of them today.
Yeah,
like I said, I listened to stories and all, for 5 hours. I'm trying to remember every single one of them. It's too many.
Yeah.
But there was a story John Sterling had said he was filling in for Susan Waldman because it was a Jewish holiday.
Yeah,
and he had never, it was one of his first broadcasts. That he was going to be doing.
Yeah.
And, because he was always, Joel Sherman was a beat writer. And they, I'll fill in, how big could it be? And he came in, he had all his notes on all the plays and this and that.
Yeah.
And John saw this stack of notes and threw them out. He goes, the game. He goes, you don't need that.
Yeah.
We're just going to talk baseball.
Yeah, yeah.
And
keep it simple.
Joel Sherman's like, now I'm relaxed.
Yeah.
Like, I was so uptight because I didn't want to screw up.
Yeah.
And at that point he's like, okay, let's talk baseball.
Yeah.
But now that there's you talk about the negativity, and another thing that stood out, Joe Beningo also put a quick podcast out.
Yeah.
And called out because you and I are old enough to remember reading a newspaper.
Sure.
And Phil Mushnick never liked John Sterling.
Yeah, yeah.
And he actually challenged Phil on his podcast. He goes, "You better not say a bad word about him."
Yeah.
When you write your next article.
Yeah.
Yeah. He goes, and the one thing that Beningo said, as he finished out, he's got to get into Cooperstown. Now, that's where, I mentioned earlier, starting off the show, talking about like the Mount Rushmore. And I actually, there's a name I forgot. And shame on me because he's also one of my favorites. Bob Uecker could also be a Mount Rushmore candidate.
And it's interesting. I don't mean to cut you off, Bobby. I'll say real quickly what I like about Bob Uecker, and I think Michael Kay used to say this. Bob Uecker, was old enough that when he would see John Sterling, he would say, "Come on, kid." He would still call John Sterling kid. I like
Yeah.
that story. I like that character. They were both a couple of characters.
And I think, and that's kind of one of the things that stings about this is, the legends we grew up on,
Yeah.
Are kind of, our youth is fading.
When he retired, in my mind, he had good habits. This was not a guy who smoked. He didn't do drugs. He lived a clean life. He was renowned for swimming. He ate healthy. You could tell by looking at him. He watched his weight, took care of himself. And when he retired, you thought, maybe if the Yankees get to the World Series again, he'll come back and do another World Series, or maybe he'll come back and do an occasional game. Maybe he'll come on, WFAN and occasionally take phone calls, which he did in retirement. You thought that there would be a formidable amount of time in his retirement, and that we would have that time. That's what's really sad about this, Bobby, is because it's like from the moment he retired until today, we really didn't get to share in what he was loving about retirement, and there was probably more time for all those stories and laughs, all of those things that are now denied to us.
Yeah, and he took so many people under his wing with expecting, or wanting nothing in return.
Yeah.
He just wanted to share his love for sport.
Yeah.
Onto whoever wanted to absorb his knowledge and his input.
Yeah.
And it's so rare these days. It's become such a cynical world where, all right, they need a favor, but what do they really want? Like, what are they going to ask for in return?
You're right about that, Bobby, because I do listen to the other radio broadcasts. I listen to Ron Coomer and his partner for the Cubs games. I listen to the Orioles guys. I listen to Pat McCarthy and his partner for the Mets and Howie Rose. Although Howie Rose is pretty good. He's worth listening to a Mets game too. I listen to the
Howie
Angels
Rose
broadcast.
is a legend. Yeah.
I listen to Neil Solange and his partners on Rays Radio. I do listen to these other guys. The Tigers, no offense to the Tigers announcers, man, those guys they're boring. It's like you put on a game and listen to them, and they are boring. And I'm not even saying it to get a cheap laugh. I mean, it's like there's no character, there's no charisma. They're just calling balls and strikes. It's not interesting. It puts you to sleep. John Sterling, he was an entertainer, an accidental entertainer, and he really engaged the fan. He engaged the listener. He kept you wanting to listen. It wasn't a chore. If anything, you didn't want the game to end. You wanted him to go on. He made 3 hours go by and feel like half an hour.
Yeah, it's Angel Boy. I want to go do a couple of more comments. We're gonna be doing another couple of minutes. We're gonna start wrapping things up here.
Yeah.
I just getting late into the evening. But we'll be back to a regular. I'll be back with the guys on Wednesday, and we'll wrap up the Baltimore series with the awards. Now that series was a sweep, by the way. But Angel Boy, he was one of the greatest teachers there will ever be. The wisdom and knowledge he had was truly amazing. And it goes to not only him being humble through his whole career and never taking anything for granted. It's it's not. It was never came off like it was for him. And just wanted to make everybody around him better.
Yeah.
And that's something that really doesn't happen enough.
Yeah.
And TC Steele's in again. Sterling was well known throughout the league. That's saying something because most of us fans wouldn't know any of the other team radio announcers. And you rattled off some of the other broadcasts. I don't know their names, but yeah, the Detroit announces it's a snooze.
Yeah.
The Astros, that's a snooze because I like to, if the Yankees are off, I'll turn on different games.
Yeah.
The Blue Jays radio broadcast, they're pretty good.
I love the Blue Jays broadcast.
They do a good job.
Sure.
Obviously the Mets broadcast, the next borough, over from the Bronx.
I do like John Miller also, the San Francisco Giants.
The Giants,
no matter what you think of
there
the
are some
Giants,
great broadcasters out there.
Yeah.
But it's the Scullys and, the Sterlings, Mel Allen, Harry Carey, Bob Uecker. These guys paved the way for every single one of them that's talking right now.
Yeah.
Actually, even Susan Waldman's paved the way for all the women reporters and that are now getting into the booth.
I'm so lucky to have Susan Waldman. And Susan Waldman, I was very privileged to be able to meet her, say hello to her. I just remarked to her how it was a privilege to meet her, and I was truly in awe of her. One thing I learned about Susan, petite woman, very very petite woman. I was surprised. I envisioned her, like being taller in stature, but she is such a trailblazer, and someday she's going to receive her flowers. Yankees fans, they love her.
She is recognized in Cooperstown.
Yeah. The
women in baseball, she's in there front and center. She's represented very well. I've seen it myself.
And quite frankly, Meredith Marakovich, she's going to follow her someday.
Oh yeah,
we're lucky to have these great announcers and to see them succeed. And I'm glad that we're on the side of progress.
Yeah. And Jonathan, I know he's asking if there's going to be more After Dark shows. Believe me, I love doing these After Dark shows. Unfortunately, tonight was for, very, very somber reason, and I happen to be off from work today. But normally when I get home, I'm not home until 2 a.m. with my new schedule.
Yeah.
So it's a bit of a challenge, but it's hopefully soon my hours will go back to normal. And we'll be able to get more After Dark shows in as the season progresses. So it's not that I don't want to do them. My schedule just doesn't let me. But, opportunity knocked. Spencer answered the phone and said yes. So here we are.
I was available.
And then, so at least we know Donald and Luca are very happy as the Knicks had an easy game. To their win.
Yeah.
And Mr. Neal saying, Susan Waldman covered both New York MLB teams. She was the first voice that was heard on the Fan.
Yeah. I'm proud. I'm glad that she holds that distinction, and it makes you proud as a Yankees fan, because the thing about these announcers, they're ours. John Sterling was our guy. Michael Kay is our guy. Susan Waldman is our woman. Meredith Marakovich, she's ours. Fans from other teams can like these announcers, but they're ours. And we have that connection with them.
And the best part about, I think the best way to put a bow on this, as Yankee fans, we have that New York toughness.
Yeah.
And if you talk bad about our people, we get very defensive, and we will come at you with facts of why our teams are the best, our announcers are the best, our beat writers are the best.
Our network is the best.
Yeah. The Pinstripe Chronicles is the best. No,
yeah.
All the Yankee podcasts that are on the air now on YouTube, we live and breathe this shit. And it's the passion of it that really keeps us going, and it's the trailblazers, that gave us the courage to use our voice. And today for John, before I say what I want to say, to close it out, Spencer, any last words?
We truly lost a legend. I think of the things that I admired most about him, the things that I most remember calls about that were done by him. I'll always keep those with me. But he's going to be he is irreplaceable, and the fear that we have is, how do we go on? And I'm looking forward to see, who will be the next big thing, in Yankees announcing who will be that next character. I feel that person is out there. Could be Dave Sims, but we shall see. I'm absorbing it just as everybody else is.
Yep. Yeah, it's you know Dave Sims actually, he has some very kind words about how
Did I
John
say? I
kind
think I
of
said Phil Sims. I meant Dave Sims. Yeah.
yeah. I was doing the same thing in the beginning. I couldn't figure it out. But no, they were friends since the 70s. So it's like they had that admiration for each other.
Yeah.
But my thank you to John is thank you for giving me the courage to speak and just talk sports. No flair, no dramatics. Just talk about the game you love and the team you love.
And he gave us one
So,
more reason for being proud to be Yankees fans. That's what I would say. That's how I would sum it
yeah.
up. Yeah.
So, rest in peace, John. Till next time.
Life well lived.